Sophia Lancaster is an African-American woman who was born and raised in a poor neighborhood of the city. Her family had nothing but love, yet they lacked financial resources. Her father was a kind man who worked as a laborer at a nearby factory, while her mother was an elementary school teacher, teaching children from their impoverished community. They tried their best to raise Sophia, but life's hardships always weighed heavily on them. Despite this, Sophia always felt the love and the tireless efforts of her parents to give her a better future. From a young age, Sophia dreamed of something greater, escaping poverty, seeking a life of abundance, living in the light of success and freedom. She knew that she had limited opportunities, but these dreams kept her standing strong and striving for more. Though she wasn't born into a wealthy family, she remained steadfast in her ideals, never to let fate decide her life, but to take control herself. However, life is often not easy, and a life full of challenges is what Sophia has been facing. Sophia had to take on multiple jobs to make ends meet. She worked as a waitress in restaurants, sold goods at small shops, and during holidays, she even did cleaning work for wealthier families. Despite the exhaustion and occasional discrimination, she always maintained her dignity and self-respect. There was never any situation where she would degrade herself, for she understood that despite life's hardships, she must live with dignity. When Sophia received the news that she had won a free cruise, she couldn't believe her eyes. She wondered if it was some kind of prank because no one in her family or her neighborhood had ever had the chance to step onto a luxury cruise like that. Although she was skeptical, she ultimately decided to go. She knew this was her only chance to experience a different world, one where she could temporarily forget her worries and immerse herself in a world of luxury she had only seen in movies. It was also an opportunity for her to step outside her limits and pursue a life she had once only dared to dream of. In the days leading up to the trip, Sophia still felt nervous. She had never left the city, and this trip felt like a grand adventure to her. But she didn't allow herself to feel anxious or scared. She knew she deserved a vacation, despite all the hardships she had faced in life. And when she stepped onto the cruise, she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. Every step she took, she sensed the opulence, the stark contrast between her world and that of the other passengers on the ship. Sparkling gowns, luxurious cars, and well-dressed guests created an atmosphere she had never dared to dream of. But unlike the other guests, Sophia refused to let herself be engulfed by self-doubt. She maintained her integrity and refused to lose herself just because of her background. She knew that no matter where she came from, she was still valuable and deserving of respect. She walked confidently onto the ship, despite feeling a bit nervous, but her heart was filled with hope for a better future. She took a deep breath, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. From the moment she boarded the ship, even the brief conversations with other passengers helped Sophia realize that she could fit into this space. She began to feel less like an outsider. Everyone treated her with politeness, even though they might not fully understand her life. Gradually, her confidence started to rise. Then, during that evening's dinner party, another change began when she met Lucy Blackwood. On the first night on the ship, when the party started, everything seemed like a fairy tale. People were dancing and chatting joyfully under the glowing lights. Sophia, dressed in a simple dress borrowed from a friend, stood still in the crowd, feeling like a small, lost figure among the masses. Without friends or family around, she was alone amidst unfamiliar faces. Anxiety and shyness welled up inside her. But then she reminded herself, this is my only chance. I have to live to the fullest. She stood there, hesitating, unsure what to do. Then, like a miracle, a gentle voice whispered in her ear, May I join you? She turned around, and in that moment, everything around her seemed to stop. Before her stood a tall, handsome man with striking blue eyes, like the clear sky of the ocean. He wasn't the type of man to draw attention with loud gestures or dominate the space, but rather a man who exuded a quiet yet captivating charm. His gaze, as it looked at her, wasn't just curiosity, but understanding, as if he had seen things inside her that she hadn't yet voiced. Lucian Blackwood, a name that sounded like a seductive whisper. He didn't need to do anything extraordinary. Just a gentle invitation to dance made Sophia feel like she was the center of attention, as if the entire space was just theirs. His eyes, bright and deep, seemed to say, "I see you," and it was a look she couldn't resist. When Sophia took his hand, a jolt of electricity seemed to run through her body. It felt unfamiliar yet warm, as if the whole world had turned back to them, just the two of them. Lucian's dance steps were very gentle, never hurried, as if he were leading her into a dance that only they understood. She could feel his confidence, yet there was no pressure. He led her, but also allowed her freedom, as if they had been dancing together forever, as if they had known each other for a long time. The rhythmic steps on the dance floor, the lively music blending with the bustling atmosphere around them. But Sophia had only him in her mind. She couldn't help but feel the strange connection between them. The first glance, the first handshake, and then the first kiss. Everything happened so quickly, but it couldn't be stopped. When she looked up into Lucian's eyes again, she realized that he felt something very special too. A feeling both unfamiliar and familiar, as if they had known each other for a long time, but had never met before. The kiss between them wasn't rushed, but a sweet and deep connection. Lucian's fingers gently tucked a strand of hair from her face, and in that moment, Sophia felt like the most important person in the world. All worries, all doubts faded away, leaving only a sense of peace and strange happiness. Though they had only just met, Sophia knew one thing for sure. The connection she felt was not by chance. It was something she never thought she would find, and surely Lucian felt the same. Together, in that dark night, under the dim light of the cruise, they wrote a love story they would never forget, no matter what challenges and barriers would come their way in the future. Sophia and Lucian, though they had only met once, felt a connection that was impossible to explain. That night, they lost themselves in long conversations, gentle glances, and sincere smiles. Never in her life had Sophia felt as important as she did then. Lucian, despite being a man of high society, showed no signs of arrogance. In fact, he was very attentive to every word she said, the simple things she shared about her life, her family, and dreams that had never come to fruition. He understood that her life was not like the lives of the other women on the cruise. It was not about spotlight moments, not about glamorous dresses, but rather a quiet life, full of challenges and sacrifices. That first glance, sweet and tender, carried so many concerns. Sophia knew that while they might have wonderful moments together, things would not be easy. She was a black woman from a poor family, while Lucian was the only son of a billionaire family. These differences were not just material. They were invisible walls, boundaries that society had created to keep relationships like they're separated. And as expected, not long after they returned from the trip, Lucian's family began to intervene in their relationship. Over the next 6 months after the cruise, Sophia and Lucian's love grew stronger. Although they came from different worlds, their feelings for each other transcended everything. Lucian took Sophia to places she had never dared to dream of, from luxurious restaurants to romantic vacations at lavish resorts. He took her for walks in the park in the afternoons, They enjoyed expensive meals together under twinkling lights at night, or simply sat together in silence, yet feeling a deep connection in their hearts. They constantly shared their dreams and hopes for the future, and the more time passed, the more Sophia felt Lucian's deep love for her. However, with a family like Lucian's, their love could not last forever without the approval of his parents. And soon enough, the opposition from Lucian's family came. One evening, while Lucien was having dinner with Sophia at a luxury restaurant, he received a call from his parents. Their words sounded like alarm bells ringing in his mind. Although he was an adult and had the right to make his own decisions, the Blackwood family, with their rigid traditional values, always prioritized class and lineage. It was unimaginable that a poor black woman could be the partner of their son, the heir to their family empire. They didn't say it outright, but all the advice, interventions, and invitations to lavish parties they arranged for him implied that he should give up on Sophia. Lucien could never forget the feeling when he heard his father, a man with unlimited power in the world of billionaires, say, "Lucien, you can't marry her. She doesn't belong to our world. You need to face reality. Your life can't be tied to a woman like that. She can't offer you anything but trouble." These words pierced his heart like sharp arrows. He loved Sophia, and he didn't want anything to stand between them. But the pressure from his family was too great, and the worry about the consequences from living in high society made him start to reconsider. Sophia couldn't help but notice the change in Lucien's behavior. After the promising and romantic conversations on the cruise, he suddenly became distant. His calls became fewer. His texts no longer responded to as quickly as before. When they met, his gaze no longer held the same tenderness. Instead, there was an inexplicable avoidance. Sophia's mind was in turmoil, and she couldn't understand why everything had changed so suddenly. One day, when she decided to meet Lucien to clear up any misunderstandings, she received a huge shock. Lucien called her out to a cafe near the beach where they first met. He looked at her with an expression that couldn't fully capture his emotions, but the words he spoke were as clear as a punch to the face. "Sophia, we can't continue like this. My family doesn't accept this relationship, and I can't face them. I don't want to hurt you, but my life is a responsibility I can't ignore." These words rang like thunder in her head. Everything that seemed perfect between them was now shattered in an instant. She stood still, unable to speak, feeling as though her chest was being squeezed. The love she had given her all to had suddenly been torn apart by barriers she couldn't overcome. She wanted to say that if he loved her, they could overcome everything, but she knew, even if he said he loved her, his family's influence would always be stronger. Lucien felt a heavy heart, but all he could do was silently watch Sophia walk away. She left without turning back, without any further explanation. He couldn't understand why everything had become so difficult. Sophia wasn't just the woman he loved. She was an irreplaceable part of his heart, but the cost was too great. He stood there, watching her figure fade away, his heart aching. From that day on, they no longer saw each other. The months that followed were gloomy for both Sophia and Lucien. She didn't understand why everything had turned out this way, and Lucien couldn't bring himself to find her. They had lost each other in despair, and each of them sank into their own thoughts, their own pain. But deep in Sophia's heart, her belief in love never faded. She knew she had to find him, no matter how many difficulties she would have to face, no matter how many boundaries society had placed on her. Since the day they were forced apart, the following months for Sophia and Lucien were a long journey filled with pain. It wasn't just because their love didn't succeed, but also because of the unerasable pain in their hearts, the harsh truth that this love couldn't exist in the world they lived in. Despite knowing this, Neither of their hearts could stop longing for each other. Every moment they spent together still vivid in their minds, like a memory that would never fade. Lucien, despite being strong and powerful, couldn't escape the pressures from his family. His parents had decided on his life for him. The meetings, the warnings, and even the subtle threats forced him to choose between his family and his love. The Blackwood family had immense power and influence over his life, but with his love for Sophia, he didn't know what to do. It pained him to make a choice, but he knew that in his family's eyes, Sophia was just a poor black woman, unworthy of the empire they had built for generations. Meanwhile, Sophia, although not someone who would easily give up, found that her love was not enough to combat the larger forces at play. The harsh winds of racism and classism made it impossible for her to stand firm in this relationship. After being rejected by Lucien, the following months felt like endless days as she drowned in feelings of humiliation and pain. Lucien's cold words still echoed in her mind, the words he said when they parted. "I can't do this anymore, Sophia. My family will never accept us. We can't overcome these barriers." Those words felt like sharp daggers piercing her heart, and although she tried to understand his reasons, the pain could not be quelled. Day after day, Sophia returned to her usual life, with busy work and the struggles of daily living. But her heart still couldn't forget Lucien. During those months, she kept telling herself to move on, to forget him. But how could she forget someone who had touched her heart so deeply? Every time she saw happy couples on the streets, every time she heard about beautiful love stories in movies, all the memories of Lucien would flood her mind, like waves continuously crashing against her heart. Lucien, too, couldn't easily live with his decision. After parting with Sophia, he felt like an important part of his life was lost. Even though his family pushed him into business affairs and lavish parties, he still felt empty and lonely. Everything around him seemed meaningless without Sophia. He often wandered through the cafes, the streets where he and she used to walk together, just hoping to see her again. But it was all just illusions because Sophia had left him and he couldn't step outside the boundaries his family had set for him. As time passed, one day, when everything seemed to be fading in memory, an unexpected piece of news hit Sophia. She found out she was pregnant, and this news shook her heart. She couldn't imagine it, but the truth was that she was carrying Lucien's children. A part of him still lived inside her. A new feeling, unfamiliar yet deeply emotional, stirred within her. She knew that this child needed to know who its father was, and there was only one way to do that. She had to find Lucien. From that moment on, Sophia's pain was no longer just about unfulfilled love, but about the existence of a small being that needed both the love and care of a father and a mother. She couldn't let the child grow up without knowing who its father was, no matter how many obstacles she would face. Her love for Lucien now wasn't only for herself, but also for the child growing inside her. The relationship might have ended in pain, but Sophia was determined to do everything to find Lucien, even if he might not want to meet her again. For Lucien, the days of separation only made him feel more empty and tormented. He couldn't disregard the love he had for Sophia, but he also couldn't face his family. Sophia couldn't stop thinking about Lucien, even though the painful breakup had happened months ago. Her heart still ached for him, and the sweet memories of the moments they shared remained vivid in her mind. But this time, those feelings were no longer just about longing or love. Confronted with the reality that she was carrying Lucien's 3 children, the pain and regret were slowly replaced by an unshakable determination. Unable to live in regret forever, Sophia knew she had to take action. She had to find Lucien so her children could know their father. Even though she no longer hoped for a happy ending to their relationship, She couldn't let her children grow up without their father. She couldn't let them become fatherless children, like the ones society had discriminated against and cast aside. In the early days after finding out she was pregnant, Sophia went through a deep panic. She wasn't just facing the pain of separation, but the fear of the future. Without Lucien by her side, how could she raise 3 children alone? But then, love and motherhood became the fire that ignited within her. She couldn't give up. She couldn't let her children grow up without knowing their father. And so, the determination to find Lucien became the only thread that connected her to the hope she had left. She began with the scant information she had. First, she went to the places where they had met, the cafes, the street corners Lucien frequented. But none of it led anywhere. Every effort seemed futile, but she didn't give up. She asked Lucien's friends, those who might know about him, but they all remained silent. She understood that these people couldn't help her, as Lucien had left them long ago, and he didn't want to be caught up in the trouble she had caused. One evening, while scrolling through newspapers, searching for any clue that could lead her to Lucien, an unexpected piece of information appeared on her computer screen. An article about the Blackwood family's shipping empire and their latest projects. In the article, a line made her heart stop. Lucien Blackwood, the only heir of Blackwood Shipping Group, is expanding the family's maritime empire. This information was like a final ray of light in the dark, and Sophia knew she had to follow this lead. Although she knew that Lucien's family would not easily accept her presence, especially since she was carrying his 3 children, Sophia was determined to find him. She had nothing left to lose. She had gone through many sleepless nights, thinking about the child, about family, about the hard days she would face. But with the fiery love of a mother in her heart, she couldn't let anyone, especially Lucien's family, decide the future of the child she carried. Sophia reached out to the law firms affiliated with the Blackwood family, trying to find any sign of Lucien. She searched through every lead, every scrap of paper, every note that could relate to him. Once, when she called the Blackwood shipping office, an unexpected conversation occurred. A staff member, unable to refuse her request to meet Lucien, began to verify the information, but as they did so, the coldness from the other side only made her more anxious. She couldn't simply approach him like that. Even though Lucien's family's restrictions were still in place, the existence of the child changed everything. Sophia was no longer the naive girl she once was, but had become a determined mother, tirelessly searching for her child's father, no matter how hard things became. Those lonely and difficult days had now become the driving force to keep her going, no matter how uncertain the future seemed. She was determined not to let Lucien leave her and the children again. Even if she had to overcome the challenges and barriers his family had set up, she would not give up. For love, for her child, she would continue to search, never losing hope until she could find Lucien, the father her child deserved. Her love had turned into an unending journey, and she wouldn't stop until everything was resolved. Despite enduring months of pain and relentless determination, Sophia began to feel the weight of exhaustion pressing down on her fragile shoulders. It felt as if every path led to a dead end, with her tireless efforts over the weeks only receiving uncomfortable silence, as though Lucien and his family had disappeared from her world. Each passing day became a challenge, and though the children in her womb grew, it was not an easy journey for them. The loneliness seemed to deepen, but each time she looked at her increasingly rounded belly, Sophia found strength to keep going. She had visited every place Lucien had been, asked those who might know about him, but no one gave her any useful information. Even when she tried to contact companies linked to Blackwood Shipping, all she received was cold rejection or vague responses. It seemed that everyone had adopted a terrifying silence, a stillness that made her feel as if she were fighting against a storm with no way out. One winter morning, as she looked out the window, Sophia suddenly remembered the words Lucian had said to her when they were together. "I will never leave you, Sophia." That promise had once been a guiding light, but now it was a fading memory, dimming more with each passing day. She told herself that she had to find him, because her child deserved to know its father, and she couldn't let the child grow up without a father figure in its life. Though she lacked enough information to begin a targeted search, Sophia refused to give up. She started digging for more information in articles and public data that the Blackwood family might have overlooked. Many long nights staring at the computer screen, skimming through lines and details that seemed useless. But then, a brief article about a conference of investors in the shipping industry made her heart race. In the article, a small note mentioned that Lucian would attend this meeting, and it would be held at a luxury hotel in the city center. Although she couldn't be sure about the information, Sophia couldn't let this opportunity slip away. She knew this was the sign she had been waiting for. So, with a heart full of anticipation and resolve, she decided to attend the meeting, unsure if she would meet Lucian or not. On the day of the conference, Sophia couldn't control the anxiety in her heart. She wore a simple shirt and black trousers, the same outfit she always wore to work, but now it made her feel ordinary compared to everyone around her. Luxury cars stopped, and sleek black cars turned into the hotel area. Businessmen and renowned investors stepped out, exuding confidence and power. She felt like a tiny grain of sand in the ocean. But no, Sophia couldn't let her insecurities hold her back. Her child needed a family, and that family had to include Lucian. She entered the hotel, the atmosphere around her as cold as a winter breeze. Everyone was dressed in fancy suits and glamorous evening gowns. She felt out of place in the crowd, but Sophia refused to let that make her weak. She searched for Lucian, looking at every face, every group, hoping to spot him in a corner. But throughout the entire conference, she couldn't find him. Without specific information about where Lucian was attending, Sophia decided to wait. She didn't want to miss the one chance to meet him. However, disappointment started to fill her heart, and nothing changed until the evening began to fall. As people started to leave, Sophia decided to find a quiet corner to sit and think about her next steps. Her mood was confused and tired, and she didn't know what to do anymore. All her hopes and efforts seemed to be fading, leaving a huge emptiness in her heart. A waiter walked by, and Sophia began to feel uneasy, unsure whether this search could continue. But then something different caught her eye as she accidentally noticed a man in a black suit walking toward her. The way he moved, walking with determination, and especially the way he looked at her made her heart beat faster. Though she couldn't believe her eyes, Sophia immediately knew it was Lucian. Yes, it was him. The two stood facing each other for a moment of surprise. Without saying a word, just by looking into each other's eyes, they both understood that this was the moment she had been waiting for. When Sophia looked into Lucian's eyes, she realized that although he stood there, right in front of her, there was an invisible glass barrier between them. At that moment, her heart pounded, but all her emotions were overwhelmed by confusion and fear. He stood before her, not with the joy-filled expression from the first time they met, but with a tense Lucian, one who seemed to be struggling with himself. With each step closer, Sophia couldn't help but feel a growing fear in her heart. Why had Lucian appeared here, after months of silence and disappearance? He stood there, tall and handsome like in her memories, but there was a chilling distance in his eyes, a distance that Sophia couldn't explain. "Lucian," she began, her voice trembling but full of determination. "I've searched for you everywhere. Why did you leave me without a word? Why did you leave our 3 children?" Lucien silently looked at her, as if he couldn't give a clear answer to those questions. They stood there, facing each other in heavy silence. Time seemed to stop, and everything around them became blurry. People hurriedly passed by, but none dared to acknowledge this tense encounter. "I can't do this. I can't just let everything pass like this," Sophia continued, her eyes filled with anger and disappointment. "You promised you would never leave me. You promised you would stay by my side." Lucien was silent for a moment, then he sighed softly. His hand went to his forehead as if searching for a reasonable explanation for what had happened. Finally, when he looked up, a painful expression appeared on his face. "You don't understand, Sophia," Lucien said, his voice dry and tired. "It's not as simple as you think. I can't stay. I can't continue this relationship. I can't break everything my family has built for someone like you." Lucien's words were like a slap to Sophia's face. She stepped back, as if she couldn't accept the truth he had just spoken. "His family," she repeated, unable to believe her ears. "What are you saying, Lucien? You love me. You love our 3 children. You promised you'd stay with me. Why is it about family? Why is it about everything except the love we've built?" Lucien lowered his head, shame and guilt clearly visible on his face. "My family will never accept this," he sighed. "My mother, my father, they'll never accept you. They'll never accept their son loving a poor black woman. They think you're a danger to their reputation and family. And so, I had to leave." These words were a shock to Sophia. It felt as if the ground beneath her feet suddenly collapsed. She couldn't believe that Lucien had listened to his family, letting them decide for him what his heart desired. She knew it wasn't that Lucien didn't love her, but what he had to face was the fear of the overwhelming pressure from his family. "So what do you want me to do, Lucien?" Sophia asked, her voice full of pain. "Do you want me to give up on our 3 children? Do you want them to grow up without a father?" Lucien didn't answer immediately. He turned away, staring out the window as if looking for some escape. Guilt, shame, and worry filled him. "I don't know. I don't know what to do anymore. I love you, Sophia. I love you and our 3 children, but I can't break everything my family has built." A deep pain pierced Sophia's heart, but she wouldn't let weakness take over. She had lived through the hardest times in her life, and now she knew she couldn't let Lucien leave her again. She had to be stronger than ever. "Lucien," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I don't need you to break everything for me. I don't need your family's approval. I only need you to stand by me, to stand by our children. That's all I need. And if you can't do that, I will raise our children on my own." Sophia's words were like a knife to Lucien's heart. He looked into her determined eyes, seeing her unshakable strength. And in that moment, he realized that what he needed wasn't his family's approval, but the strength, resilience, and unconditional love that Sophia had for him and their children. However, despite this, the pressure from his family was not easy to let go of. In that moment, Lucien understood that his life had been too controlled by the expectations of society and his family. Everything he had done, every choice he had made, had been trapped within invisible walls that he couldn't free himself from. Sophia, with her love and determination, had taught him a valuable lesson. Love is sacrifice, love is choice, and love is courage without looking back. Although it was painful, the truth was finally revealed. Lucien could no longer run from his love, and eventually, he had to face the choice between his family and his children. When Lucien stepped into the Blackwood family mansion, the atmosphere in the room seemed to thicken, heavy enough to cut with a knife. Everything in this lavish house was unchanged, from the grand murals to the glossy leather chairs. But all those details only highlighted the coldness of the confrontation ahead. Lucien didn't feel comfortable. On the contrary, he felt the tension rising through every cell of his body. His parents sat facing each other in the large living room, their faces marked by the signs of age and power. His father, Albert Blackwood, head of the family empire, had eyes cold and sharp like a knife. His mother, Evelyn, a woman who always appeared refined, yet under that gentle exterior was a heart filled with doubt and worry about the future of their family. Both had never been satisfied with Lucien's relationship with Sophia, and now the matter had gone too far beyond their control. Lucien stood alone in the silent space, his eyes meeting theirs, but his heart felt like it was drowning in a sea of conflict. He loved Sophia. He loved her and their 3 children. But he also knew that the decisions he made today wouldn't just affect him. They would affect his entire family, those who had always wanted him to preserve the Blackwood Empire. Lucien, Albert's voice rang out, cold but strong. We need to talk. He didn't stand up or invite his son to sit. Everything was done according to the Blackwood family rules. Power and status always came before feelings. Can you explain this? Why is there a woman like her in your life? And why have you let things go too far? Lucien didn't respond immediately. He knew his father, like all those times before, wouldn't easily accept his explanation. Dad, Mom, he said, his voice calm but firm, this isn't a relationship I can control with logic. I love her. I love Sophia. Love. Evelyn interrupted, her voice tightening. You can love anyone, but you can't love a woman who's not worthy of this family, not worthy of the Blackwood name. She turned to her husband, her eyes full of worry. Albert, if we let our son continue down this path, we will lose everything. The reputation of our family, all that we've built, will crumble. Lucien heard those words, and the pain in his heart deepened. He couldn't understand why his parents saw love as something to be traded, something to be bought. Sophia wasn't an object. She was the woman he loved, the mother of his children. How could he abandon her just because of what his parents thought of her? I don't care about reputation or the family empire, Lucien said straightforwardly. I only care about my love. If the family can't accept that, I'll find my own way. He turned to leave, but before he did, he paused, his voice gentle but determined. I will not give up Sophia, and I won't let my 3 children grow up without a father. From those final words, Lucien could sense a shift in his parents' eyes. They no longer saw him as their child, but as a man who had the right to decide his life. But the determination in his eyes left them stunned. They never thought Lucien would give up everything for a woman like Sophia. Evelyn turned her face away, saying nothing more. The future daughter-in-law would never be accepted by the family, never able to step into this world. Albert, on the other hand, sank deep into thought. He knew that if Lucien couldn't understand the power of family, these decisions could very well be his son's mistake. After that, the atmosphere in the room fell back into a deadly silence. But one thing Lucien knew for sure. His love for Sophia would never be erased, even if he had to face the entire world, even if he had to fight against his own family. Lucien left the mansion, walking out into the world, and the determination in his heart was only further forged. He knew that the truth could not be hidden forever. He had to face his family, but the most important thing was that he had to face himself and accept that love is sacrifice. It's a choice without regrets. But the story wasn't over yet. As Lucien stepped out of the mansion, a new world was opening up before him. A world he would have to rebuild from the ground up with love and responsibility, but also with pain and faith in himself. Lucien stood in the quiet garden of the Blackwood mansion, the golden afternoon sunlight shining down on the lush green leaves. A gentle breeze blew through, carrying the faint scent of flowers, but inside, his heart felt heavy with tension and resolve. Just a few hours earlier, he had had a serious confrontation with his family. Despite the pressure and the accusations, he knew that his life could no longer return to what it once was. He loved Sophia, and that was the only thing he needed to clarify in his heart. As soon as he walked out of the mansion, Lucien did not look back. He could not accept the silence from his family, nor could he accept living in the shadow of reputation or societal expectations. The only thing he could do now was to go find Sophia, to find his love, and to build a future for their 3 children. At the same time, in a small room in a city hospital, Sophia sat alone, looking at the 3 ultrasound pictures of her children. She had gone through challenging times, from facing the opposition of Lucien's family to the despair of not knowing where to find him. However, Sophia never gave up because she knew that love and the responsibility of motherhood could never be shaken. With each passing day, her determination grew stronger. She would not let her 3 children grow up in a world lacking their father's love. Sophia knew that after all the pain and doubt, she would have to find a way to speak with Lucien once more. No matter what life threw her way, no matter how his family tried to stop them, she was determined to move forward, for her children and for the love that she and Lucien had shared. Then one day, while the sky was still bright, Lucien appeared at Sophia's doorstep. He stood there, silent, simply looking into her eyes. Sophia saw the resolve in his gaze, and her heart couldn't help but tremble. After all the searching, all the sleepless nights, they finally stood in front of each other, no longer hindered by family or societal threats. There is only love in their choice. Sophia, Lucien said, his voice still weary and heavy, I had to face my family. I can't run away anymore. I love you, and I love our 3 children. I don't want anything or anyone to tear us apart anymore. Each word Lucien spoke echoed in Sophia's heart, as if it washed away all her doubts. She felt the truth in his words. He had faced all his fears, and now the only decision left was to love her and their little family. Sophia smiled, her eyes shining brightly, as if all the worries had been wiped away. She walked toward him, her hands trembling as she held his. We will make it, Lucien. No matter how much your family opposes, no matter how society laughs at us, me and the 3 children will always be by your side. Together, we will start a new life. A life where only love matters. They stood there, hand in hand, without saying another word. There was only harmony in their eyes, and the hearts that beat as one. Finally, they had overcome everything. No more barriers, no more pain. They had found each other, and that was the most important thing. From that day forward, their lives were no longer filled with loneliness or fear. Lucien and Sophia began rebuilding their future. Their family, despite the opposition from Lucien's parents, decided to stand together and overcome everything. They lived in love and mutual respect. Each day, they cherished beautiful moments, and their 3 children would grow up in the strong love their parents shared. Only love can overcome all obstacles, and for them, happiness began right at this moment. Time passed quickly, and everything seemed to have changed. Lucien and Sophia's 3 children had begun to grow each day, surrounded by the love of both parents. Each day that passed, their children's smiles became the strongest motivation for them to keep striving to build a perfect home, a family they had always dreamed of. Lucien, after 3 years no longer living in the shadow of the Blackwood family, had learned how to become a devoted and loving father and husband. The 3 children, each with their own charm, all inherited beautiful qualities from both their parents. They had bright eyes, sweet brown skin, and the intelligence and wit that Sophia had taught them. Lucien felt happier than ever when, each morning, the sounds of his children's laughter warmed his heart. From the early days of struggling to become a father, Lucien was now a more mature man, always ready to take responsibility. However, even though they had been happy for the past 3 years, the Blackwood family had been quietly watching them. Lucien's parents, despite their efforts to sever all ties with their son, could not completely ignore his life. Pictures of their grandchildren, the children of color they had never met, were sent to them every few months by private investigators hired by the family to keep track of them. At first, these pictures were just simple, emotionless images, snapshots of Lucien's family life. But gradually, those pictures began to change. Evelyn Blackwood, the mother who had always maintained a perfect image of the family in her heart, began to feel something different in those photos. Lucien's children were not just the unacceptable offspring. They possessed a charm and grace that she could not ignore. She saw the care and love that Sophia lavished on her children, and she could not deny that they were the result of the genuine love between Lucien and her. Especially their eyes, those bright eyes like the sun, full of hope and love. Though she wanted to refuse, she couldn't stop looking at those pictures every time the investigators sent them. Albert Blackwood, the father, who was typically firm and cold, also could not resist the love Lucien had for his family. Those photos, along with the happiness and warmth they expressed, gradually changed his perspective. Although he could not fully accept Sophia, despite his lingering hesitation about the difference in skin color, he began to realize that Lucien had not made a mistake by choosing this path. This family, though not perfect in society's eyes, was full of love and sincerity. And finally, after 3 long years, the Blackwood family decided to visit their son. They had convinced themselves that they could not live forever in doubt and arrogance. They needed to face the truth, to accept the changes within the family, and to meet their son and the grandchildren they had once rejected. On a sunny morning, the Blackwood family arrived at the small but warm home of Lucien and Sophia. The door opened, and Lucien stood there, his expression calm, but his eyes betrayed the anxiety within him. He didn't know how his parents would react, whether they would truly accept the changes in the family or continue to reject them. When Lucien's parents entered the house, the atmosphere in the room seemed to change. They looked around, observing the family pictures hanging on the walls, the simple but heartfelt objects Lucien and Sophia had gathered over the past 3 years. Then, when Evelyn saw the 3 children playing in the corner of the room, her heart seemed to soften. These children, though not the grandchildren she had imagined, were children she could not help but love. She looked into their eyes, and naturally, a gentle smile appeared on her face. Though she hadn't said a word, she had begun to accept them and, in turn, accept their mother. Albert Blackwood stood silently, his eyes distant. Perhaps he had once thought that everything would return to how it used to be, but now he understood that there was no way to go back. This family had changed, and that change was not a bad thing. He looked at Lucien, at Sophia, and at the 3 children, then a soft smile appeared on his face. A smile that conveyed acceptance, a smile that signaled forgiveness. "Son," Albert said in a deep voice, "your mother and I were wrong. But today, we are here to apologize, and to say that this family will always be yours. We may not understand it immediately, but we will build a better future with you." Lucien looked at his father, his eyes filled with gratitude. He felt as if he were living in a dream. Those words, the ones he never dared to hope for, were now a reality. In the end, the Blackwood family accepted Sophia and the 3 children. They no longer lived within the walls of societal prejudice, but instead, they had opened their hearts to true love and happiness. Their family had completely changed, not just because of the acceptance of the elders, but also because of the forgiveness and genuine love Lucian and Sophia had built. Their love was not just a story of two people, but the story of an entire family, one that they could now be proud of and protect. The story ended with Albert and Evelyn Blackwood standing together, watching their grandchildren play, and the smile on their faces was the final acceptance. The Blackwood family was no longer just a name in society, but a real family where love and acceptance were the core values. The story above is not just a love story. It is a journey of deep exploration into the core values of life: love, resilience, and acceptance. This story revolves around Lucian and Sophia, two people from vastly different backgrounds, one from a wealthy white family and the other a poor black woman, carrying with her a dream of a better life. It is these differences that created great challenges for their relationship, but in the end, love and determination helped them overcome everything. Firstly, the story emphasizes that true love knows no boundaries of race, class, or ethnicity. The love between Lucian and Sophia blossomed from the very first glance, despite society, family, or surrounding prejudices making everything difficult. While Lucian was from the upper class and Sophia was a poor black woman, their affection for each other transcended all of these things. The story affirms that when two hearts truly belong to each other, no difference can stand in their way. This is what creates enduring strength, the glue that connects them to overcome society's invisible barriers. However, the story also reflects a painful reality about racism and the closed-mindedness of family, where traditional values and societal expectations are sometimes too rigid and resistant to change. Lucian's family, especially his parents, despite their wealth and power, could not overcome their prejudice regarding racial differences. They could not accept their son's relationship with a black woman, and this led to a painful separation. They didn't realize that love is not something that can be controlled by money or power, but something that stems from the heart and sincere emotion. This is the point the story wants to make. Sometimes, it is the societal norms created from the past that hinder true happiness, and we must fight to change them. The story also speaks about resilience and determination. When Sophia discovered she was pregnant with Lucian's 3 children, she had no other choice but to find him. Even though life became harder than ever, she did not give up. She was not just searching for her love, but also for the responsibility towards her 3 children and the future she hoped to build with Lucian. This is a powerful testament to the strength of motherhood and perseverance. Sophia did not let rejection, hardships, or loneliness stop her from seeking happiness and protecting her children. Finally, the story carries a message of change and acceptance. Although Lucian's family initially strongly opposed and tried to sever his relationship, over time, they gradually changed. They began to realize that the love Lucian had for Sophia and the affection they shared for their 3 children was an irreplaceable part of the family. The pictures from the investigators, though just small moments, made them realize that the love and care Sophia gave her children was not wrong, and in fact, was something to be cherished. This is an important message. Change is never easy, but when we have enough courage and perseverance, what seems impossible can become a reality. The fact that Lucian's family eventually accepted Sophia and their grandchildren was a significant turning point, not just for the Blackwood family, but for society in breaking down barriers of racism and class. With all of this, the story is not just a journey of love, but also a struggle to overcome the difficulties and challenges of society to build a family and a life based on love and acceptance. It emphasizes that love is not only a connection between two people, but also the bond of a family. And sometimes acceptance from those around us is the crucial element that helps that love flourish and thrive. The story is a powerful message about overcoming barriers, protecting our own values, and ultimately affirming that if there is love, everything can start anew.